So, if you've ever felt like you just can't stop the sugar intake, or if you felt like you are craving sweets all the time, I want you to understand it's not just about willpower. There's some true biology behind it and some habit forming loops. But the good news is, once you understand the why, then you can start working on changing the pattern.
Are you a busy woman who prioritizes everyone else's health above your own? Do you have questions about your diet, exercise, or how to prevent or treat certain health conditions? Are you always Googling health questions that you forget to ask or are embarrassed to ask your primary care physician? Girl, do you even have a primary care physician? Well, welcome to Headed to Healthier. I'm Dr. Brittany Anderson, a board-certified family medicine physician, and every day in my private practice, I have discussions with women just like you who are doing their best to juggle the demands of life while also desiring to become healthier. Inside this podcast, you'll find practical and actionable health tips that you can incorporate into your daily life. You'll get expert advice and insight from some of my awesome healthcare colleagues, and you'll hear relatable conversations with incredible women just like you who have made their health a priority and are thriving because of it. So throw on your sneakers and get some steps in while you listen. Or if you're driving, get those hands at 10 and 2 and let's dig in. We are headed to healthier.
Hey, welcome back to today's episode. Today we are going to talk about sugar. And let me tell you, if your sugar cravings feel like they're running your day or your mood, this episode is for you. I want you to take away a couple things from today's episode. One, I want us to have an understanding of why it seems like sugar is so hard for us to quit. I want us to talk about how we can manage our sugar cravings. And I'm going to discuss how we can create some realistic change when it comes to managing our sugar intake. So, first, let's get a little bit into why sugar feels like it's so addictive. And let me tell you, it is not just in your head. When you eat sugar, your brain actually releases dopamine. Dopamine is one of those feel good chemicals that's linked to pleasure and linked to rewards. It's actually that same hit that your brain gets from things like shopping, social media, and even gambling. So, yes, there is a literal high that you get when you eat sugar, and your brain then starts craving when and where are you going to get that next fix. But it doesn't just stop there. Sugar also causes a blood sugar spike. And so, what a blood sugar spike is really is just this quick burst of energy. But what goes up, as we know, must come down. So, that spike that we get from eating or drinking sugar is usually also followed by a crash. And that crash can leave you feeling tired or irritable or foggy. And what ends up happening then is that your body starts to crave more sugar to bring you back up again. And so that's how we get kind of on that roller coaster between the sugar spikes and then getting those crashes and then spikes and crash and just the back and forth. And then there's also the emotional piece. Sugar sometimes for many of us becomes our go-to for comfort. It's a reward for us, or we count it as a stress relief, especially when you're busy, right? As most of us are busy juggling work and family and everything else. So you do something great and you want to reward yourself. What do you generally do it with? I know for me, sometimes it's a slice of chocolate cake or something else sweet, and that may be the same for you. Or if you've had a bad day and you come home and you just want to eat a chocolate chip cookie, we sometimes will get rid of our stress or de-stress from our day with sweets. And in general, sugar just sometimes gives us this moment of calm or escape, but we've got to remember that this is just temporary and that it can lead back to that spike and crash that we talked about before. The other thing that I think we as women should know is that we talked about in previous episodes that change that comes with hormones, especially as we age. And it's also important to know that those hormone changes can affect how our body thinks about and craves sugar. So as we start going into perimenopause, and certainly as we get into true menopause, as we've already discussed in previous episodes, our estrogen starts to drop. And when that happens, our body becomes more sensitive to blood sugar swings. That means that when you eat sugar, you get a faster spike and you get a sharper crash, which again puts you back on that roller coaster we talked about and leads to more cravings. So if you've ever felt like you just can't stop the sugar intake, or if you felt like you are craving sweets all the time, I want you to understand it's not just about willpower. There is some true biology behind it and some habit forming loops. But the good news is, once you understand the why, then you can start working on changing the pattern. Another reason, kind of outside of that, so outside of it being, biological or habit loops that I talked about before, but sugar can be hidden. There are some sneaky places, y'all, that sugar is being hidden in foods that we eat, in things that we drink. Even foods that we think of as healthy or not a big deal may have added sugar, and it does just that. It adds up with time. Think about protein bars, coffee creamers, sauces, even some yogurts out there that are labeled as healthy but may actually have added sugar in them. So, what becomes important there is me asking you to start paying attention to nutrition labels. So, nutrition labels have to show the amount of added sugars. So, you can look at them and tell the difference between how much sugar is naturally found in foods like fruit and how much sugar is added during processing. And so, added sugars are common in things like soda and candy and baked goods, but there may also be added sugar in things that you least expect. So, like sauces, like some of the coffee creamers, etc. So, really start getting yourself in the habit of looking at some of these food labels and getting an idea of where there is added sugar that you otherwise may not have thought about. I know I mentioned earlier how getting that extra sugar in can sometimes be a reward for us or a source of comfort or stress relief, but there are a couple signs that your body will show you to give you an idea that you are getting too much sugar in and that it's really starting to affect your health. So, some of those are just like I said before, the energy crashes. And the energy crashes usually come after the sugar spikes. And so, if you have big sugar intake, and an hour, 2 hours later, or even sooner than that, you just feel like you need to go take a nap somewhere, that is an energy crash, and that is directly related to too much sugar intake. Some people will complain of having brain fog if they're getting too much sugar in, and especially if they have a period of time where they're not able to get sugar. So, kind of just like we'll get that brain fog if we go for periods of time without caffeine and our body is otherwise used to having it. And so, brain fog is another sign that you are getting way too much sugar in on a regular basis. Some people also will have just a belly fat that won't budge. That can be directly related to sugar. And so, another reason that if we are trying to get healthier and trying to lose weight, adding extra sugar to our diet is not going to help that at all. The other thing is mood swings, right? And so sometimes if we're getting too much sugar in, again, it goes back to earlier saying kind of those spikes and crashes that can come with mood swings, irritability. We also can have sleep changes that come. We've had an episode all about sleep, had Dr. Anna Krute on earlier for an episode, and she talked about some things that affect our sleep. Let's add sugar, too much sugar intake to that list as well. And so then we get to this space of needing to break up with sugar. So I'm going to give you what I think are 5 good steps that you can take to break up with sugar. And this is without just going cold turkey. If you are anything like me, you have tried most of these fad diets that are out there, the ones that make you have kind of a hard stop at sugar on day 0, you are eating sugar all the time, and then this thing starts on day 1, and all of a sudden you've completely cut sugar out of your diet. Well, we all know what happens then. You do good maybe for the first day, 2 or 3 days, and then you feel like you hit an absolute wall. Like I said earlier, you get that brain fog, you're all moody and irritable, you're not sleeping well, all these things that can happen. And it really is because you have just made a hard stop of the sugar in your diet. Even though I want you to get to a place that you're not getting as much sugar in your diet, I'm not telling you that you've got to cut it out cold. But what you could consider instead is to start backing off of how much you're taking in. And so, 5 ways that we can do that. Step 1 is to start with just some awareness. So, start just logging what you're eating, what time you're getting those cravings for sugar. My patients who have diabetes, I give them a log to keep. And on that log, they write down what their blood sugars are, but they also write what they eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And sometimes we go back together and sit down and look at them. And I can only assume that they're not looking back at them themselves before they bring it into clinic, because we'll look and I just start pointing out how much sugar they're still getting in that they may not realize. So if you were to journal what you eat and then go back and actually take a look at it, you may see that you were getting a lot more sugar, especially like that added sugar that we talked about earlier, in your diet than you really realize. So, step one is just awareness, getting an idea of how much sugar you're actually taking in. Step two is stabilizing your blood sugar with balanced meals. And so, most nutritionists will tell you, especially my patients who have diabetes, but even if you don't have diabetes, that you don't want your sugar going up and down all through the day. So remember those highs and lows, the spikes and crashes. We really don't want those. And so, one good way to balance your blood sugar is making sure that you've got balanced meals, that you've got protein, fat, and fiber with each of your meals. That you really just don't want to be loading too much sugar in your meals, but also you don't want to be having unbalanced meals. So, really working hard to get the protein, the fat, and the fiber in your meals. The third thing you can do is swap sugar with smarter choices. So, if you have a craving for something sweet, instead of making that a Snickers bar or a slice of pie or a chocolate chip cookie, make it a piece of fruit or add cinnamon to something that you like. Cinnamon gives things such a great taste and is a really good substitute sometimes for adding sugar to things. And if you just absolutely need the chocolate, make it a dark chocolate instead. So, step three really is swapping that sugar with just a smarter choice. And number four is probably my favorite, and that's having mindful indulgence. So, again, I'm not saying that we should, hard stop our sugar altogether because then we're going to feel like we've hit a wall. You don't have to make it an all or nothing that either you are going to eat a ton of sugar all the time or you're going to eat no sugar at all. It's just really a matter of finding a balance and still being able to take in those things that you like and those things that taste good to you, but just not overdoing it. So, moderation is really important there. And number five is just doing those other things to care for yourself. So, making sure that you're having good hydration and good sleep and that you've got good stress management techniques so that you really aren't having those big cravings for sugar to be something that rewards you for a stressful day or something that makes you feel better about the stress that you're under. And so, really making sure that you've got good stress management. So, we'll go through those steps again. Step one is starting with some kind of awareness. So, just writing down what you eat and getting an idea of how much sugar you're getting in the day. Number two is stabilizing your blood sugar with balanced meals. So, making sure that your meals are, made of protein, fat, and fiber. Number three is swapping sugar with smarter choices, so choosing things like fruit or dark chocolate or cinnamon instead of sugar. Number four is having just mindful indulgence, so not making it an all or nothing, not making it that you have to absolutely cut sugar out of your diet, but just doing or taking it in moderation. And number five is managing stress so that you can reduce those cravings for sugar. When you're making these changes, it's important to remember that you don't have to be perfect. Again, when you're doing these things, when you're making these changes, it really becomes a mindset shift, right? There's no need for you to believe that you have to be perfect and that you can no longer have any sugar in your diet because it's going to ruin, everything. If you have a good 2 weeks of cutting back your sugar intake and then you go to a birthday party or you go to a dinner and get a sweet dessert, that's okay. You don't have to be perfect, but you should be consistent, right? And it's okay to splurge every now and then, but you don't want to be consistently splurging. And so you want to truly make sure you're not depriving yourself. Just think of it instead as you're supporting your future self. So kind of reframe the way you think. If you take some of the sugar out of your diet, it's not that you're taking away all the things that are good and you're depriving yourself, but instead that you are making the steps towards getting healthier, and that is our goal. So I'm going to leave you with a quick win. I'm going to give you a suggestion of one action that you can start taking today. You can make tons of other changes, but one that you can start taking today that we've talked about on a previous episode already is to swap one sweetened drink a day for water. So say that usually at breakfast you have orange juice. Switch that orange juice for water instead. Let's say usually during your lunch break, you have a soda or sweet tea. Switch that for water instead. Same thing at dinner. That is a quick win that you can get and a really good way that you can start cutting some of that sugar out of your daily intake. And if you didn't listen to that episode before about ways to increase your water intake, please go back and listen to it. I'll copy it in the show notes because there's lots of good information there of other ways you can incorporate more water into your day as well. So, in closing, let's look at some main takeaways. The biggest takeaway that I want you to have from this episode is that you really can control your sugar intake, and it doesn't have to be with absolute restriction, and it shouldn't come with guilt. But also, I want you to remember that it's not just about willpower. There really is some biology and habit formed loops that are at the core of why we crave sugar so much through the day and in our regular lives. But again, that good news is that once you understand the why, once you think through the dopamine and the sugar spikes and crashes and the emotional piece, once you understand that, then we're able to start making that change so that we can change that pattern in our lives. If you find that you crave sugar through the day but know that you need to cut it down, I guarantee you, you are not there alone. I'm in that same boat with you. I'm working on it as well. I'm encouraging my patients to work on it. You encourage those people that you love. Share this episode with a friend who you know is tired of that sugar roller coaster as well, in hopes that she gets something out of it. And if you will, if you've not done so already, join our Facebook group and share some of your biggest wins from this episode. In that group this week, I'm going to be sharing 5 smart sugar swaps you can make. We've already talked about one of them, and that's one that I want you to focus on today, and that is switching out a sweet drink, one sweetened drink that you would ordinarily have in a day. Swap that out. Small changes like that can lead to big results down the road. I hope that you've learned a lot from this episode. I'll be here next week. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening in today. I hope something you heard in this episode will help you on your journey to becoming healthier. Remember, this podcast offers general health information. I am not your personal physician. If you need advice that is specific to you, be sure to consult your physician. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider sharing it with a friend and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Tune in next week for another great episode of Headed to Healthier. Until then, take care of yourself. Talk soon. Bye.